I want to introduce our guests tonight, and I will tell you kind of a little introductory about Measure O. On my far left is Lyra Filippini. She is the co-chair of the Yes on Measure O for Our Downtown, Our Future. Please, folks. And the steering committee of the Downtown Commons Advocates. Lyra, welcome. Now you can, Lyra, welcome. Thank you. And to my immediate left is Don Lane, the governing board chair of Housing Santa Cruz, the co-chair of the No on O campaign, and former mayor and former council member in Santa Cruz, Don Lane. Don Lane is an ex-mayor of Santa Cruz. There are, by my guess, like 370, I think, ex-mayors of Santa Cruz in this town.
And like 7 in the room right now.
Right, 7 in the room right now. A lot of them are on your side of the issue, but a lot of them are on Yes also. So I don't know, it must make it kind of awkward at the annual softball game of all the ex-mayors, I would guess. But this is a very complex issue, Measure O, and it is really complicated because at the center of it is this thing called the Library Mixed-Use Project, and it is a 3-in-1 construction project that is scheduled, planned to go in at Cedar Street between Lincoln and Cathcart, and you probably all have heard about that. It is a brand new main branch of the Santa Cruz Public Library, along with 123 units of affordable housing and a 3-level parking garage, all on what is called Lot 4 in Santa Cruz. And the strange thing about this measure is that a yes on Measure O means a no on that particular project, and vice versa. A no on that means you support that particular project. So really, in a way, this is kind of a referendum on that particular project and how it has come to be. So we're going to talk about that. And really, there's 4 kind of components to it, which is why this is so complicated. There is the library. I hope my guests will agree that no matter what happens, if O passes or if O fails, Santa Cruz will get a new downtown public library. No matter if O passes or it does not, the Santa Cruz Farmers Market will continue to exist. Those are 2 things that there seems to be some confusion about in the community. But there are 4 kind of elements to this. We mentioned the library. The second is housing. Measure O wants to prioritize housing on 8 city lots across downtown Santa Cruz. And the third part is the farmers market. It will essentially decide the fate of where the farmers market will be, not if the farmers market will exist or not, but whether it will be on Lot 4, where it has been for 20 years, or will move to another site, probably Lot 7, which is a couple of blocks away. And lastly is the parking structure, which is also a part of this, and that is a big element also of this. So we're going to kind of talk about all of that. We're going to try to go through it and figure this out with Lyra and Don here. I want to begin with Lyra Filippini, simply because, as I mentioned earlier in the introduction to Measure N, the kind of burden of proof is on those who want us to vote yes. So this is my kind of why is this necessary kind of question to begin with you, Lyra. The Library Mixed Use Project has been...
Excuse me, were you going to let us each have a 2-minute introduction?
Oh, yes, I'm sorry. I'm sorry, I forgot about that entirely. Yes. I'm sorry, I forgot about that. We are going to let each person have a 2-minute opening statement. And we're going to begin with Lyra Filippini. Go ahead, Lyra.
Thank you. Can you guys hear me? Yes. All right. Thank you so much. I really appreciate that. And I really appreciate the intro that you've given, because it is, I think, a relatively complex measure to a lot of people. We like to look at it as actually being really holistic. We see that we are on the precipice of a huge amount of change in our community, quite literally a restructuring of our landscape and our horizons. And with that change comes a huge amount of responsibility that we do it in a way that will be sustainable for our community. This is actually about the long term for those of us with Measure O. It is not about just one project at one lot, though we think that there's a lot to both gain as well as to lose when it comes to that particular lot. So what we really want to talk about is the fact that, like, usually these projects come across one at a time, and it's very limited how many people actually engage with the process and look at how are we using our publicly owned space. And right now, publicly owned space, actually land in general, is the fastest dwindling and most precious, probably most valuable resource that we have downtown. We want to make sure that the community is at the table to make those decisions. What do we do with our publicly owned land? 30 seconds. Where will we have public gathering space for events? Where is that most optimally placed? Does it matter if we have roots there? Not only community roots, but heritage tree roots. Does it matter where the library is and what it's paired with and our history? And does it matter whether we actually say these other lots are investments towards affordable housing in the long term, or allow decision makers that sometimes we don't engage directly with to decide what to do with that land in the future? We think it's the community's decision. Thank you.
Don Lane, go ahead.
Thanks. I hope you'll leave here tonight with two conclusions. First, that the adoption of Measure O is going to be a negative for the people of our community. And second, that you can't rely on the information and messages that the Yes on O campaign often provides. But I'm going to start with why I think Measure O is so harmful. Measure O stops 124 apartments with real, legally binding affordability. It's the kind of apartments people who work in our community at lower wage jobs can afford. Measure O chooses a smaller, lower quality library powered by a fossil fuel. O has poor parking policy because it actually blocks parking consolidation. O has 13 pages of city planning and housing policy that is so muddled and contradictory that even city planners and affordable housing experts can't decipher some of the meanings and conflicting language. All language that was written in private. And Measure O limits the farmers market's options. The Yes on O campaign has a talent for creating new facts when the real facts don't work. They've invented facts about housing, about the library, about parking, about costs, about process, and more. They are a very creative group. I look forward to diving into the facts on all of these. And I want to say, I wish I could be more positive tonight, but there really isn't a positive way to say no to a bundle of bad ideas. There isn't a positive way to debunk incorrect statements. That said, we do have a positive vision for our downtown. That vision has a lot more affordable apartments, a terrific new green library, and a great farmers market. But most importantly, it's a vision for a community that includes families and workers that don't make a lot of money. And it's more than just a vision. We actually have a path for achieving that vision if we can just defeat Measure O. Thanks.
Thank you, Don Lane. We are going to do this. I'm going to ask a question of one person and give the other person a chance to respond. Then I will go to the second person and ask the first person to respond. Our timekeeper here is Thomas. He will tell you when your time is running out, and there's a lot to get to in this. Of course, it's a big measure, so we're going to try to get through it. My first question goes to Lyra. Lyra, the library mixed use project has been 6 years or more in the making. It was passed by City Council, and it's the product of about a year of study by the Downtown Library Advisory Committee, including library professionals who endorse the building of a new library over the renovation of the old library after a year of study. Why and how was that process flawed, and why should we not trust it?
Well, first I'd say that actually up until about a month ago, it has been in a concept phase, this entire project. The first application, actual application, and first public community meeting for this project as a whole happened last month. So what we've been doing this whole time is looking at how are we going to spend our Measure S funds that we all voted for modernization, upgrades, and repairs to our county branches, and to construct or expand facilities where necessary. The word where necessary is actually really important. And I think we actually all know what the definition of that word is, but you can look it up if you're confused about it. So Measure S made it so that we all actually expected a renovation of our library or a new library in its current location.
Real quickly, Measure S was passed in 2016. It was correct. A funding bill for the library system.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
Go ahead.
So we agreed to tax ourselves for this new library, and the DLAC, did have this very long process for looking at what are the pluses, what are the minuses, what are the options. And one of the things that's actually put out there quite often about, that there was this robust community input process. Well, they had one really, really large survey. That survey had 3 questions. Not once was it asked, how do you feel about the possibility of this library being moved and built as part of a mixed use project with a garage and possibly other elements? There were ample opportunities in these 6 years to ask that question. And instead, they moved through this process with every step hearing that there was this huge community desire to renovate the library where it is and to improve the space where the farmer's market is. I'm so sorry. Pink means we're out, yes? All right, thank you. I can see that out of the corner of my eye, so I will have that memorized. Sorry about that.
Don Lane, was this a effort to pull a fast one on the people of Santa Cruz?
Yeah, 6 years is really fast. I agree. I think there is part of what Lyra said is important, that there was a Downtown Library Advisory Committee. Its job, which it did extremely well, is said, we have the Measure S funding. What's going to get us the best library? And I think really, we can parse the language, but we all know that when we voted for Measure S, that was the fundamental thing we were voting for. Is we want a better library than the downtown library we have now. And so we asked people in the community who really know a lot about libraries. We had national library experts who live in this community, and they were part of that DLAC, and they unanimously said, we'll get a better library if we go to the mixed use site. So then let's remember that that was just the first step. Then we had a city council subcommittee go for a year. And that is where, so it isn't just a month ago, that process is what led to the true mixed use project. That's when we got housing, we got reduced parking, and we got even a better, bigger library out of that process. It really was a great community process. I was part of it. Some of the folks who are yes on no were part of it too. I was at the same meetings with them, and they were all heard. I was heard, and we made it to where we are now, which was a really great new project.
Don Lane, the Library Mixed Use Project is a major project that will affect downtown Santa Cruz for generations and will, if built, presumably be here long after we all die. For a project this fundamental Why shouldn't it be on the ballot? What's the argument that the people of Santa Cruz shouldn't give this a thumbs up or thumbs down through the ballot box?
I'm with you. They should be. And guess what? We're doing it. That's what we're doing with Measure O. And I'm very confident personally that the people of this community, when they look at that whole picture, they're going to say, this is the project we want. We do want a better library. We want to move forward with affordable housing. We do want the farmers market's future to be secure. Every one of these things is what's on the ballot. And I think it's what most of the people in this community want. It doesn't mean, I'm not saying there aren't people who totally disagree with me. I know for a fact there's hundreds, thousands, but I do think most people in this community want the things that this project offers. They've had a lot of time to think about it. They've read a lot about it. And now I think they're ready to vote. And I'm happy to see what happens with that vote.
But it would not have been on the ballot unless the people from Measure O put it on the ballot, right?
Right. And that's fine too. But the city council, we do have a city council, went through an incredibly robust process, just like they do for every other major project that we do in this community, and some minor ones too. And when the city council votes 6-1 that they want to move forward with this project, that's a pretty clear message. That's why we have an initiative process if people want to object. But I don't think the default should be that every time someone objects, we have to put it on the ballot. Because in Santa Cruz, that means we'd have a ballot measure every week.
Lyra, go ahead. How'd you like to respond to that?
Thank you. Okay, so I'm going to go back to the library for a second. So one of the things in the library master plan and one of the things that was discussed at the DLAC was this desire for a single level library. And there were reasons for that: line of sight, ease of navigation, and of the employees being able to use the space. And the current library is 2 stories. Well, the very first round of this library mixed use plan that really was the library in a garage did have all the library on a single story with a garage on top of it. And of course, people had a lot of concerns about pairing this library with this massive garage. So fast forward now to years later, instead of a single story library, if this is what's better for a library, we have a 3-story library. The 3rd story will have no staff presence. It is a mezzanine with a grand piano, an art gallery, and a lounge. And it has the only outdoor space coming off of that, this roof deck that is literally on the opposite side of a long, narrow library from where the children's area is on the ground floor. In the library renovation plan, the children has this large expanded area, and right outside from that is its own children's dedicated patio. And there's a different community patio in the renovation plans as well. I'm going to bring up one last thing, which is that the city applied for a library grant from the state. They were denied that grant. And I've read the Senate bill it came out of and the guidelines for that grant. And we would get it if we applied for the renovation.
My next question goes to Lyra. Why does the Yes on O side put such a high premium on keeping things where they are? What difference does it make if the new library is on Church Street or Cedar Street, as long as it's a fine library that serves the community? Even given that the farmers market has been operating from the same spot for 20 years, what difference does it make that it have to be on lot 4 and not lot 7 if it has the infrastructure it needs just a couple of blocks over?
It's a great question. So I think one of the things that's important to say is that we're actually not trying to keep everything where it is. We're trying to nurture the roots that we have for the things that have actually shown that they work really well. And this is a very common urban planning practice. The leaders in urban planning say, you watch how people function, you watch what works and where. Things that don't work in certain places, they probably need some changing. Things that really do work and things that become part of your culture is actually one of the most important things for having an engaged, sustainable society and community. And another little, piece of information is that, of course, all these other lots that we have actually identified as future affordable housing locations, That's not keeping something where it is at all. These are surface parking lots that we would like to have dedicated and invested. It's a community investment of land into something that we're going to need the most into the future, which is affordable housing. And Front Streets, Lot 7, which the farmers market has identified as the next best current place for a market when they've been told they had to move, is traffic burdened. It has 3 times the amount of traffic. It's smaller. And we don't know if it would work there. But quite frankly, Measure O does not mandate that they would have to be on Lot 4. The community would be putting their vote in for that. And we only control what happens above the ground level on Front Streets Lot 7 and the other 8 lots, not on ground level. So if the farmers market actually really wanted to move there and chose it over Lot 4, they could.
We'll get to that in a minute, but Don, you want to respond to that?
Sure. I think one of the things that's really important to think about with the library and where it's located and what kind of library we have is, what about the future? What does our future need with libraries? What do our kids need with libraries? Where should a library be to serve the next generation in our community? And the answer is where they will use it the most. And if we have 1,000 new housing units right along Pacific Avenue, and we have a library that much closer, that's a benefit. And I'm going to say something that probably will upset some people, but our downtown library is not very well used right now. It's not in a place that people think, wow, I really want to go there a lot. And I think we could put a library in a place where a lot more people are going to see it, they're going to use it, it's going to be really attractive. And that's really valuable for us to think about. And then on top of that, the new library is going to have so many more features and amenities that, again, serve the kids who are going to use it. And it's not my generation that needs that library, it's the kids. I'm fine with the old library. They're not.
Don Lane, one of the criticisms of Measure O was that it might delay the building of affordable housing and the opening of a new library in Santa Cruz. But what guarantees do we have that if Measure O fails, that the library mixed use project will be built in a timely manner? Isn't it possible that it could be delayed for years as well?
It's possible, but let's talk about timelines of affordable housing projects. So usually an affordable housing project takes anywhere from 5 to 10 years from when someone says, hey, I think we're going to do this project, to when people move in. In fact, when one of the other projects downtown that's going on right now, I started working on that when I returned to the city council in 2009. It just broke ground 2 months ago. So that's how long it takes. So I can't guarantee that it will move quickly, but I will guarantee you that a project that is this far along with some of the funding, not all of it, but a substantial amount of funding, and is such an excellent project, will in fact move along faster, substantially faster than if we try to move that same project to some other location. You're basically throwing all the work that's been done and all the time that's passed away, so that we'll lose this project. So I want to tell you, Wallace, this is why I'm in this campaign. This is what I do, is try and get affordable housing built in this community. And it just kills me, the idea that we're going to lose this project. And I know it's still going to take some more years to get it done, but it's going to get done. And I don't know what's going to get done if Measure O passes.
Lyra, what about that? The bird in hand argument. We have these 123 units online to be built. Why give that up?
Well, because that particular project will lock away the very best location for a public plaza for our gathering space into the future. We are talking about something that's maybe not set in stone, but it is set in cement for
this
a very
is the downtown
long time.
commons idea that you
This is the downtown commons, and where that is located is actually crucial. It's the only southwest facing sunny, large, central lot where it would benefit the businesses and the community. But let's talk about the bird in the hand part of it, okay? The city has acquired $7.49 million in a very short period of time recently, when they already knew this was going to be an initiative and on the ballot. So who's jeopardizing that $7.9 million out of the $128.49 million that they currently think the housing portion alone will cost? So they are $121 million short. And the big part of why this is not a bird in the hand is that not only do they not know whether they're going to get the funding for the garage at all, the parking district's been in the red for years. And they would actually need that for the garage before they build the housing. But no one's talking about the elephant in the room, or should we say the toad in the room. Total Fitness does not belong to the city, and they need that lot for this project. They have been trying to acquire that lot, and they have not yet been able to secure it, let alone know how much it's going to cost. Guess what? We own all of lot 7.
Great, thank you.
Wallace, I know that generally we're not having a second shot, but it's
go
possible.
ahead. Yes.
I would
like
to say, I think this does really, it's so important. I'm not even going to buy your language about a bird in the hand. It's not a bird in the hand. Even this project is not a bird in the hand. It is so far along compared to starting over. People who do this work in affordable housing, they think about all the groups that have endorsed our position, no on Measure O. All the affordable housing groups in this community who know how this all works. Their main reason for opposing Measure O is they know that this is going to be a terrible setback for affordable housing. They don't care about the library. They just are in this for the affordable housing, and they're watching what's happening, and they're going, don't do this. These are people who work, they spend years and years just on one project. And that's happening right now with this. Now, it's great to say we might be able to do something somewhere else. We might have some, and Lyra's right, something might come up. But compared to what'll come up if we start over, this is really far along.
Lyra, go ahead. I gave him a second bite of that apple. I'm gonna offer it to you as well.
Okay, so if they put out an RFP, a call for proposals, right, for lot 7, they could have a design that looks like it's far along pretty quickly, and they could put out the first community meeting pretty quickly, like they just had the first community meeting for the lot 4 proposal as a whole last month. Once again, what has been 6 years in the making has been this contentious community discourse around what are we doing with these Measure S funds that we all are getting taxed for, and layer upon layer of like, okay, the community doesn't want what we've decided that we're going to make this part of the garage, so let's add on the next little layer. Let's make this more palatable. And I actually think that it's a wonderful testament to the power of being able to fight for what your main focus is, that Don Lane and the other folks in the affordable housing advocacy group that are like really focused on that have been able to say, you know what, that is a bad project, but it's also an opportunity. We can actually make something good out of this project that people don't want. So let's add affordable housing to it. But once again, we own all of lot 7. We wouldn't have to spend money to acquire that particular piece of land. We'd be able to have a larger footprint and more housing on lot 7 than the part of the footprint that they're trying to propose for the housing on lot 4, plus the 3 layers of concrete parking garage that would be underneath it. None of these things are good for our community where they are put together in the manner and order they have been put together, where the community has made really clear on record in much more numbers than support it, that we do not support it.
Okay, thank you, thank you. Okay, this is for Lyra. Lyra, I have spoken to many rank and file people who are not part of either campaign, who are put off by, even resent the deception in the messaging in support of O that says, save the farmers market. Now, you and other O supporters have told me that this is not part of your messaging, but it's written on the sidewalk of Pacific Avenue as we speak right now. Yes, you can't be held responsible for what any supporter might say of your initiative. That's true. But don't you think that messaging has damaged your cause?
I think that the No on O group, the messaging that they have put out, putting these words into our mouth, has damaged our cause actually quite a bit, because not one time have we put out a flyer, put it on our website, put it in a mailer. Nowhere has the Yes on O campaign said, save the farmers market. So this is one of those, it makes me wonder, like, who's deceiving who? Who's
these people I spoke to, are they making it up? I mean,
I to tell you the truth, I don't know where it's coming from, but I do see that. And actually what I really love is a 5-hour let's debate the facts sort of situation one of these days, because some of the stuff that I am seeing coming out of the No on O campaign, not only can it be pretty easily refuted with documents and data, but also when it comes to that, we're saying certain things that we've never said. I encourage anyone to find anywhere a place or something physical or on the website archives that we have ever said something like save the farmers market.
it's on the sidewalk on Pacific Avenue right now.
Yeah, but, I didn't put it there. Yeah, sure. Maybe someone from the other side put it there. I don't know.
Really? Or
okay.
Is that what you think? Really?
No, it's just, but you know, so who put it
Don
there?
Lane, did you do that?
Oh gosh, I wish I had thought of it though. But I do want to tell you one thing, because you know we all talk to lots of people, but there are just way too many people, Wallace, not just the ones you talked to recently. So many people back in the spring would tell me over and over again that the signature gatherers who were trying to put Measure O on the ballot would say, save the farmers market, please sign my petition. I have had so many people tell me that they heard that message. So that may not be written anywhere, Lyra, but that was your volunteers doing the work of the campaign. Maybe it wasn't volunteers, it was someone else who was carrying your petitions, but that's what petition carriers were saying. And this, you know, this is not, it isn't helpful because the farmers market has already saved itself. And I know you know that, but your people, seriously, and those signature gatherers are part of your people, did create an incredible amount of understanding in the community that Measure O was going to somehow save the farmers market. And that's really harmful to people's understanding of what they're voting on.
Okay, thanks. Don Lane. Given that so much of the energy behind Measure O is resistance to the 3-level parking structure that's part of the library mixed-use project, wasn't it a mistake to include the parking structure in this plan? Why couldn't the project have gone forward with just a new library and new housing units?
There's 2 reasons why it wasn't a mistake. One is that we're on a trajectory of losing a tremendous amount of parking downtown, especially at that end of downtown, that end of Pacific, not the end toward the town clock, the other end. So to have a project, it probably, what I would say, yes, it was a mistake when it was 600 parking spaces and that was the main element of the project. However, when it became 240 some spaces, and is the third banana in this project, now I think it's right sized. It actually is the right amount of parking. We're gonna have hundreds and hundreds of new people, new families living downtown, some of whom will have cars. And we do need some parking for them. And if it wasn't included and we had a downtown commons on lot 7 and on lot 4, and we just lost the Calvary parking lot, we'd basically have almost no parking at that end of Pacific Avenue. And I don't think anybody wants that or thinks that's a good idea. The other piece that I will just mention real quickly is there really is a reason why 3 and actually 4 things in one in this project, and that is that it's much cheaper to build the project. It actually saves us all money if we combine uses in one project, one foundation, one amount of site work. And the architect for the library has said that this combining is saving tens of millions of dollars. And this is not Don Lane saying, this is not the Measure O, No on O campaign saying that. This is the architect who's designed the project. And I would be happy to show anyone who would like to see it, the document where the architect says that.
There, I'm sure you will dispute his numbers about the parking.
Well, he's right that right now they're proposing 243 spaces of parking, but the staff very recently at the very last presentation actually admitted that they might once again go back to having an underground level later. They might add that right back in later. Right now, it is the second largest element. It was previously the largest element as far as square footage and volumetrics. Right now, it's the second largest element, and it includes the most massive amount of concrete. So we're talking a huge amount of embodied carbon, which is, it accounts for about 8% of our global carbon emissions every year is concrete production. So when we're talking about building this new library with lots of concrete for the foundation and this huge parking garage, we're not just saying that we're investing in car culture into the future. We're actually saying, and we're okay with dumping this huge amount of embodied carbon into the atmosphere during the construction of this building. But let's go back to the parking for just a second, because we have a parking management problem, not a parking supply problem. This is what the Nelson Nygaard study said that the city council paid $100,000 for just a couple of years ago. And they did account for us losing some of these parking lots to development and adding extra development to our future. Let me give an example for this parking mismanagement. Right now, the city is allotting over 200 parking spaces to the Seaside Company, who, by the way, have donated $12,500 to defeat Measure O. They have allotted over 200 parking spaces to the Front Street garage on the weekends. We could do something better than build a new garage. We could instead park those employees over on the county building that's an empty lot every weekend, 350 spaces that are empty.
Okay, we're going to go to some questions from the audience here that have been submitted. I guess this is to Lyra. If the current library is renovated, which would be part of Measure O, how long would it be closed and where will the books go?
Well, I'm not an expert on renovations, but what was calculated back when they did the renovation study was that it would probably be about 2 years. And right now the city is predicting that it would cost about $2 million, which is what part of what they are accounting for in their renovation total costs. $2 million up from $750,000, which was actually the study's analysis for the rental of the commercial space and moving the books to a temporary commercial space. So even though there are escalation costs with construction, our commercial space per square footage for rental has actually gone down. So there's a little bit of a miscounting there, but most likely, just like during the pandemic where we survived, we figured out a way to still be able to get our books when we did not have this space to actually access and enter and utilize on a daily basis. We would be able to do so for most likely, according to the city, about a 2-year period of time through a different commercial location. And there would still be technology available at that location for people who needed it. So it would be temporary, and just like all the rest of the renovations and remodels in our county branch library system, it would be closed for a period of time.
Don, would the library and the library mixed use project be closed at all? I mean, or how would that work?
That's one of the really nice side benefits, is that if the old library stayed open until the new one was finished, it would just be the amount of time it took to physically move the books and the equipment over, which is probably weeks rather than years. So there is that benefit. I think, it is true. What Lyra said is correct, that we did make it for 2 years in the pandemic without the library being open. And what an incredible loss that was for so many people. I mean, there are, again, people like me, the library is a nice thing. There's other people who just totally depend on it. Kids who do their homework there, people with no access to technology. And again, Lyra's right, there could be a sort of a slap together little bit of technology available in some alternative site, but it's not going to be a library. It's not going to be anything like a library that we think of as a full function library for 2 years. And what a loss to our community. And then when it's, when the renovation's done, I think this has been missed a little bit. There's often a saying, well, the renovation, when it's done, it'll be just as good. No, it's going to be 25% smaller than the new library would be. Now, there's no way that anyone can legitimately say that that's just as good. A library that serves multiple uses in our community, we need the space. We use it for meetings and so many other things, kids activities, teen activities. We need more space and better space than we have now.
All right, Don, this is a good question. Thank you for this, whoever put this one on. Please give us a realistic and honest answer for how are we going to finance that parking garage?
Yes, thank you so much. Because I feel like the people who are for Measure O are so sure they've got us on this one, and they don't. They're really wrong, and this is why I have to spend a lot of time digging into the facts about this. Right now, the estimate for that, the parking element of this, is about $15 million. The debt service on that would be to build that, to borrow that, is about a little over $1 million a year. We have a parking district that has over 3,000 parking spaces. The revenue to that parking district is growing as we speak. We all see it. We're all going downtown more. We see more people down there. More parking is happening. We're about to have.
But you can't predict that. You can't.
Well, let me tell you, I can predict this one. We're going to have about 1,000 more people living downtown over the next couple of years. And about half of those people will probably have cars. They're going to buy a parking permit. They're going to be paying into that parking fund. And we are going to have more revenue for the parking district than we have now. It's correct that it was in a deficit. Now the revenues are increasing and we're going to be able to do this. And so it's just a story that sounds good. Oh, well, the parking district's in a deficit and now we can't do it. Well, the parking district's thriving again. The revenues are increasing and we're going to be able to do this.
Lyra, I got a suspicion you have something to say about that. Go ahead.
You are correct. So, one of our many, many co-founding organizations is Campaign for Sustainable Transportation. They have been following the data, not only from the Nelson Nygaard study that the city commissioned, but also every single year's annual data from the city, looking at how many parking spaces do we have in our downtown district and how many do we use. Now, what they have shown is that we almost always have about 1,500 vacant spaces. This is coming from the city's data. Now, not only that, so we have plenty of parking, even if we lose a couple of hundred. Not only that, the deficit has been going on for a really long time. This has been going on since before the pandemic. And it's looking like it's going to probably not even break even for another 5 or more years. So we're talking an interest rate that is going to just grow and grow and grow. And what the Nelson Nygaard study specifically said, because we have too much parking and we have poor parking management and we have a poor utilization of how we set our parking fees, is that most likely we would have another parking deficiency fee put on our businesses because we wouldn't be able to generate enough money from our district. But that's just the cost of money. The cost for the environment is a much bigger issue. And that is why the Sierra Club was one of our founding organizations. The Sierra Club, that goes all the way up to the national level, supports us. Santa Cruz Climate Action Network, Campaign for Sustainable Transportation, and the Youth for Climate Justice are all adamantly pro Measure O.
Wallace, I'd love to be indulged. Maybe I can't be, to say a little more about that one.
Sure, go ahead.
I want to read something from the Nelson Nygaard study. It says infill development and rising opportunity costs of parking suggest that there is an increasing demand for consolidated, structured parking facilities over time. As with future development, the most obvious opportunity sites for consolidated parking supplies are existing surface parking lots within the district. So we hear over and over again that the Nelson Nygaard study is sort of godlike information about what our parking policy should be. And Nelson Nygaard is saying we should stop having flat parking lots and put what parking we have in a structure. And now Measure O is going to undo that direction that we're moving in. So I don't know how that comes across as good parking policy. It just doesn't make any sense. And then we have people who actually know about municipal finance and people who know, who really know about parking finance telling us we can do this project. And then we have the Sierra Club telling us that we can't finance it. I am a member of the Sierra Club for 40 years. I trust them on a lot of issues, but on parking finance, not so much.
Lyra, I'm going to let you respond and then we're going to wrap it up. Go ahead.
The Sierra Club has to do with the environmental cost, not the financial cost. There's a really, really, really big difference. And if we're going to survive here long term, we have to really start looking at the environmental cost. But Nelson Nygaard gave a huge number of recommendations for how we can improve our parking management into the future, including exactly what you just pointed out, Don, that the best use for these parking lots in the future are someday consolidation when that's needed, but actually for housing, which is exactly what Measure O is saying that we should be using these surface parking lots for. And I'm going to point out one more thing. Once again, the Seaside Company could move their employees out of our Front Street parking garage and provide their own parking somewhere else, or go park at the county parking lot. I think that would be a much better use of our parking at Front Street, is to actually open that up to the people who are downtown who need it, instead of allocating it to this big for-profit company that owns a huge amount of real estate, commercial and private, throughout the city. But also, the Cedar Street garage is the oldest garage that we have. It is 1 block away from Lot 4 where the farmer's market is. It is covered in ivy. It is a huge garage, but only has a second level. When we do someday need parking in the future, Measure O chose not to touch that site. If we need parking in the future, let's make more parking there. We can have 4 or 5 levels if we actually need it. There is too much at stake if we lose Lot 4. Okay, great.
I am going to allow each person to have kind of a closing statement, and to help you with that, I'm going to give you a prompt. Now, you can say whatever you want, but here's my prompt. If your side fails, what will this community lose that we might all regret somewhere down the line? Lyra, I want to begin with you.
That's a great prompt. So I think I've kind of, touched on that quite a bit. We lose the absolute best place that we have downtown for what would be kind of like a community living room, a place where there's daily activity, where there is live music, where the farmer's market would have a permanent home with the big trees that would be cut down if we do lose. And that's actually huge. The urban forest is actually crucial if we're going to survive here. But beyond that, we actually lose the community's ability to rest assured that we have a clear understanding of the fact that our land would be used to our most crucial needs. These other parking lots, these surface parking lots, 2 of them, yes, they're small, 2 of them would be used for a huge luxury hotel, 228 room luxury hotel. Now that would actually be great for the businesses, but it should be done on privately owned land. Our land is truly dwindling fast. And once something's built there, it's built there. It's owned by those people. It's utilized for that use. And the price of land is going up. If in 60 years we realize, hey, guess what? We built it all up, and we actually really still need more affordable housing. So those 2 small lots, because they're just the examples of the small lots, right? Instead of being for a hotel, we could say, all right, let's consolidate those, just like they need to do with lot 4, because they still don't own the total fitness building, right? You consolidate those small lots with lots nearby them, or you land swap with somebody to another lot that they have that's near other land that we could purchase, and we build what we actually need.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Don Lane, if your side fails, what will this community lose?
A lot. And I mean so much. One thing that it's going to lose is what we are already seeing we are losing. We're just going to keep losing it. And that is the range of diversity of people who get to live here. Lara is probably not someone who would be called a NIMBY, but the Measure O campaign uses exactly the same language as what a NIMBY uses, which is, we want affordable housing. Yes, we want it. But wait, no, not there. Not there.
No, and 8 lots.
So that's how this has worked for decades in lots of places, but especially in this community. And what have we seen? We talk about all the change we're worried about. The change that I'm worried about has already halfway happened. And that is that a lot of people have had to leave this community, including my 2 daughters, because there's not affordable housing here. And Measure O is absolutely going to set us back. And it isn't just going to set us back in this one project. It actually removes other opportunity sites like the old library site from being another great affordable housing site. And we cannot do this anymore. We cannot say no to affordable housing. We need to protect the kind of community we want to be, a diverse community that has a variety of people. That's what this community stands for, even more than it stands for whether or not we have some tall buildings.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you very much. Measure O on the ballot in November. It's a tough decision. Good luck to Santa Cruz in figuring out. I want to thank so much my guests. And remember, these are not people who are running for office. They kind of, in a way, embody the best of community activism, putting themselves on the line for this measure. So thank you to both of you. Thank you to both of you.
Don Lane, thank you so much. Lyra Filippini, thank you so much. Thanks, folks. Go out in November and vote.